Good morning. China's top leader, Deng Xiaoping, proved today that rumors he had died were only rumors. Deng appeared on Chinese television with hardline Premier Li Peng, smiling and greeting members of the army units that crushed the democracy protests in Tiananmen Square. Bill Whitaker joins us now by telephone from Beijing. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Lynn. It's evening here, and darkness has settled over a Beijing that is subdued and resigned. Even the universities are quiet today. Thousands of troops still patrol the city center in a stark show of force. It's a vivid reminder of government resolve. Martial law is working here. Thousands of troops have secured the city. Outward resistance has been suppressed. Now officials have begun to round up students, workers, and other supporters of the pro-democracy movement. This man was snatched from the streets of Beijing and whisked away by security forces as fellow citizens looked on. A sense of calm and paranoia have settled over Beijing. Authorities have asked protest leaders to turn themselves in, and state-run TV is broadcasting telephone numbers for, quote, dutiful citizens, unquote, to call and report on counter-revolutionaries. The arrest of pro-democracy activists is going on across the country. These were picked up in Canton. As American evacuees continued to arrive in Tokyo, these American students arrived in Beijing from the provincial city of Chengdu with fresh tales of horror and resistance.
One young man that we visited with, that we talked to at the university, he had a friend whose ear was lost. And when they went to visit him at the hospital, his face was so bashed in, they couldn't even recognize him. The students hate everything that's going on, and they're going to fight until they get what they want.
But at least for now in Beijing, the government has reimposed its will. The open flirtation with freedom that blossomed here this spring has withered under the shadow of troops and tanks. Lynn?
Bill, we saw this morning Deng Xiaoping on the Chinese television broadcast, but what is the significance of that showing?
Well, it clearly means that the Communist Party hardliners are firmly back in control. Deng Xiaoping, if you remember, was early on called for the pro-democracy students to be crushed. And Li Peng is the one who imposed martial law. Conspicuously absent today from the TV broadcast was Zhao Zhang, who is reportedly sympathetic to the student movement. Lynn?
Thank you very much, Bill Whitaker from Beijing. While the army now seems to have a firm grip on Beijing, elsewhere in China, demonstrators are still turning out to show support for the pro-democracy movement. Jerry Bowen reports from Shanghai.
Tens of thousands of students converged on Shanghai's People's Square today to remember the massacre in Beijing. It was the biggest anti-government demonstration anywhere in China since the carnage in Tiananmen Square. But it was given tacit approval by Shanghai officials because it was recognized here as a day of mourning, a memorial service for a crackdown which the central government in Beijing now insists never occurred. The protest in Shanghai took a dramatic turn today when all the blockades in the city were reportedly removed. The students say they won't erect any new street barricades for the next 48 hours while they await a government response to their demands. Demands that call for a dialogue, a broadcast of the video of the Beijing massacre on Shanghai TV, and a lowering of city flags to half-staff in memory of the Beijing victims. The students promise unspecified new demonstrations if the government doesn't comply.
We are sure that we will win a final victory, although it may mean that we will have to fight for some long time and we may lose some more lives.
For his part, Shanghai's mayor said last night he's rejected calls to use the army here, but he also said it's time for public order. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Shanghai.
Last night, President Bush re-emphasized his administration's displeasure with China's violent crackdown on the demonstrators. Ron Allen has more on the president's news conference and China.
The president relied on his experience as special envoy to China to field an array of questions about the turmoil in Beijing. He's been trying to personally telephone China's leaders without success to make an assessment of the situation.
I want them to know that I view this relationship as important, and yet I view the life of every single student as important.
The president said he is uncertain if China's hardline leadership has consolidated power or who else might be in control of the government.
He's trying to say that I don't know. And I'm trying to say you don't know. And that's the way the Chinese system works.
Mr. Bush said he was personally disappointed by the student massacre and that China's 17-year relationship with the U.S. could never be normalized unless the urge for democracy and human rights is recognized by the government.
We have to speak out in favor of human rights. And we aren't going to remake the world, but we should stand for something. And there's no question in the minds of these students that the United States is standing in their corner.
For now, the president intends to stay his current course, hoping the suspension of military sales and eventual diplomatic contacts will help resolve the crisis.
The situation is still very, very murky.
Throughout the night, the president was clear and consistent. He wants to strike a balance, maintain a good relationship with the Chinese government, and send a strong message of condemnation for what's happened there. Ron Allen, CBS News, the White House.